My name is James. I'm 70 years old. And 12 years ago, I made a promise at my wife's grave that nearly destroyed me. For 12 years, I kept that promise. I wore this ring like armor. I shut everyone out.
But then I met Patricia, and she showed me that some promises need to be broken so better ones can be kept.
I promised I would never love again after my wife died. It wasn't a casual promise, not something I whispered in grief and forgot with time. It was a solemn vow, made at her graveside, with my children as witnesses, with God listening. At 70 years old, I had kept that promise for 12 years. 12 long years of honoring Catherine's memory by closing my heart to everyone else. But before I go any further, you need to understand something crucial. If you're watching this and you've made promises to yourself about what you will or won't do with the rest of your life, if you've built walls around your heart and called them loyalty, if you think keeping yourself locked away somehow honors the person you lost, I'm about to show you something that will change everything you believe. So stay with me, because my story will challenge every promise you've ever made to protect yourself from pain. I wasn't always this way. Before Catherine died, I was open, warm, the kind of man who made friends easily and loved deeply. We had been married for 41 years. High school sweethearts who grew up together, grew old together, built a life that felt unshakable. 3 children, 7 grandchildren, a modest house with a garden Catherine tended obsessively, Sunday dinners that stretched into evenings, laughter, arguments, making up the ordinary, extraordinary life of 2 people who chose each other every single day. Then the cancer came. Pancreatic, stage 4, by the time they found it. The doctors gave her 6 months. She lasted for I watched the woman I loved fade away. Watched her lose weight until she was skeletal. Watched pain etch itself into her face. Watched her fight with everything she had. And then watched her stop fighting. Watched her let go. I held her hand as she took her last breath. At the funeral, standing beside her casket, I made my promise. Catherine, I will never love another woman. You were it. You are it. I'll live the rest of my life honoring what we had. No one else, just you, forever. My voice broke. My children cried. And I meant every word with a conviction that felt sacred. The years after were survival. Just getting through each day without her. The house felt massive and empty. Her garden went wild. I couldn't bring myself to tend it. Couldn't touch her things. Her clothes still hung in the closet. Her reading glasses on the nightstand. Her coffee mug in the cabinet. A shrine to a life that was over. My children worried constantly. Dad, you need to get out. See people, join a group. Maybe meet someone. I would shut them down immediately. I made a promise to your mother. I'm keeping it, they meant well. I knew that, but they didn't understand. This wasn't about being stuck. This was about honor, loyalty, love that didn't end just because death happened. I wore my wedding ring like armor. When women at church showed interest, I would hold up my left hand. Still married, always will be. When my friend Robert suggested I try one of those senior dating websites, I actually got angry. I'm not interested. I made a vow. Robert backed off. Everyone learned to back off. By 70, I had perfected the art of living alone. I had routines, systems, ways of filling the hours that didn't require another person. Grocery shopping on Tuesdays, library on Thursdays, church on Sundays, dinner with one of my kids every other week. It was enough. It had to be enough. Because the alternative, opening my heart to someone new, felt like betrayal. Like erasing Catherine. Like pretending those 41 years didn't matter. Then my daughter Lisa did something I thought was unforgivable. She signed me up for a grief retreat. A weekend program 2 hours away for people who had lost spouses. When I found out, I refused to go. Absolutely not. Lisa persisted. Dad, you've been stuck for 12 years. This isn't about dating. It's about healing. About being around people who understand. Please, just try. I almost said no. Almost, but something in Lisa's eyes stopped me. She looked scared. Scared for me. Scared I would spend the rest of my life this way. Alone, bitter, frozen in time. And maybe, just maybe, a tiny part of me was scared too. Scared that this was it. That I would die as alone as I lived. That my promise to Catherine had become a prison. So I went, packed a bag with resentment in every fold. Drove 2 hours rehearsing all the reasons this was pointless. Checked into the retreat center with my walls firmly in place. Ready to endure the weekend and prove to Lisa that I was fine. That I didn't need fixing. The retreat was held at a quiet conference center surrounded by woods. 23 participants, mostly women, a few men, all widowed, ages ranging from early 60s to late 80s. The facilitator, a grief counselor named Dr. Martinez, explained the weekend format. Group sessions, private reflection time, optional activities. The goal wasn't to make us move on. It was to help us integrate our grief into our lives, instead of being consumed by it. I sat in the back of every session, arms crossed, participating minimally, but I listened. Listened to a woman named Carol talk about the guilt of laughing again. Listened to a man named Frank describe the loneliness of eating dinner alone for 8 years. Listened to stories that sounded eerily like my own. And something started to crack. Just a little. Just enough to let a sliver of light in. On the second day, during free time, I walked the grounds. The woods were beautiful. Fall colors, crisp air. I found a bench overlooking a small pond and sat down. Just sat, thinking about nothing and everything. About Catherine, about the promise. About whether living like this was really what she would have wanted. That's when I heard a voice. Is this seat taken? I looked up. A woman stood there. Maybe late 60s. Grey hair cut short, warm eyes, tired smile. She gestured to the other end of the bench. I shook my head. It's all yours. She sat down. Not close. Respectful distance. We sat in silence for a while. Just two strangers watching ducks glide across the pond. Something about her honesty disarmed me. I'm James. And yeah, my daughter did the same thing. Said I've been stuck for 12 years. Patricia nodded. 14 for me. My husband Richard died of a heart attack. Sudden, one day he was there. Next day he wasn't. I didn't even get to say goodbye. Made a promise at his funeral that I'd never love anyone else. Seemed like the right thing to do. I felt my chest tighten. I made the same promise. To my wife, Catherine, 41 years together. I told her at her grave that she was it. No one else, ever. Patricia met my eyes. And how's that working out for you? The question hung in the air. Honest, cutting, necessary. Not great, I admitted. I'm lonely, angry, tired, but I can't break that promise. It feels like betraying her. Patricia nodded slowly. I know exactly what you mean. But here's what I'm starting to realize. Maybe the promise was never about honoring them. Maybe it was about protecting ourselves. Because if we never love again, we never risk losing again. And God, I don't think I could survive that pain twice. We talked for 2 hours, about our marriages, our losses, our children who worried, our friends who stopped inviting us places, about how grief had become our identity, How widow and widower weren't just titles but entire personalities we had built. And slowly, carefully, we talked about the fear underneath it all. The terror of opening up and getting hurt again. The guilt of even considering it. Now, listen carefully, because this is where everything changes for me. Patricia and I are about to discover something that will shatter the promises we built our lives around. If you've ever felt trapped by your own vows, if loyalty has become a cage, if you think love can only happen once, what happens next will break your heart open in the best possible way. Stay with me. This is crucial. Over the weekend, Patricia and I became inseparable. Sat together at meals, partnered in group activities, walked the grounds for hours. And something I never expected started happening. I started laughing. Real laughter. The kind that comes from your belly and makes your eyes water. Patricia told terrible jokes. I shared embarrassing stories about my grandkids. And for the first time in 12 years, I felt something other than grief. But the guilt came too, heavy and crushing. On the last night of the retreat, I lay in my room staring at the ceiling. Catherine's face filled my mind. I could hear her voice, see her smile, feel her presence, and the guilt was suffocating. "I'm sorry," I whispered into the darkness. "I'm so sorry, I promised you. I promised." I almost left early the next morning. Almost packed my bag and drove home before sunrise to avoid saying goodbye to Patricia. But she found me at breakfast. Sat down across from me with coffee and sad eyes. "You're running," she said simply. I couldn't lie. "I feel like I'm cheating on my wife." Patricia nodded. "I feel like I'm cheating on Richard. Even though they're both gone. Even though it's been over a decade. Even though they'd probably be furious with us for wasting our lives this way." That last part stopped me. Would Catherine be furious? I thought about the woman she was. Vibrant, full of life, stubborn, opinionated. She would have hated seeing me like this. Alone, miserable, using her memory as an excuse to stop living. She had made me promise to live. Actually made me promise in her final days. "James, promise me you'll live. Really live. Don't just exist. Promise me." I had promised. Then promptly broke that promise by building a fortress around my heart. "Patricia, can I tell you something?" She nodded. "My wife made me promise to live. In the hospital, right before she died. She grabbed my hand and made me swear I wouldn't just exist. That I'd really live. And I promised her. But then, at her funeral, I made a different promise. That I'd never love anyone else. And I've spent 12 years keeping that second promise while breaking the first one." Patricia's eyes filled with tears. "Richard told me the same thing. He said, 'Don't waste your life grieving me. Find joy. Find love, if it comes. Be happy.' And I said yes. But the second he was gone, I decided that being faithful meant being alone. Like choosing life somehow meant forgetting him. But it doesn't, does it? We can honor them by living, by being happy, by opening our hearts again." We exchanged phone numbers before leaving. I drove home in a daze, confused, terrified, but also feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Hope, maybe, just maybe. Patricia called that evening, just wanted to make sure you got home safe. We talked for an hour. Then every night that week, long conversations about everything and nothing. Getting to know each other, carefully, tentatively, to people testing whether it was possible to feel something new without destroying something old. My children noticed the change immediately. "Dad, you're smiling. What happened at that retreat?" I tried to brush it off. But Lisa persisted. "You met someone." I felt defensive. "It's not like that, we're friends." Lisa smiled. "Dad, it's okay. It's more than okay. Mum would want this. My eyes filled with tears. I made her a promise. Lisa took my hand. And she made you a promise too. She made you promise to live. So live, Dad, please, live. Patricia came to visit 3 weeks after the retreat. I was nervous, cleaned my house for hours, changed my shirt 4 times, felt like a teenager preparing for a first date. When she arrived, the awkwardness lasted about 30 seconds. Then we fell into easy conversation, like old friends, like people who understood each other completely. We went to dinner, a small Italian place Catherine had loved. I hadn't been there since she died. It felt significant, bringing Patricia to Catherine's favorite restaurant, like introducing them somehow. I told Patricia about Catherine over pasta, showed her photos on my phone, shared stories, made her real. Patricia did the same about Richard, and something beautiful happened. We weren't competing with ghosts. We were honoring them, making space for the past while creating something new. As I drove Patricia back to my house, I felt my heart racing. This was a crossroads. I could say goodbye, keep her as a friend, maintain my promise and my comfortable loneliness. Or I could be brave, risk everything, choose life over loyalty to grief. When we reached my driveway, Patricia turned to me. "James, I need to tell you something." "Me too," I said. We spoke at the same time, then laughed. "You first," I said. Patricia took a breath. "I haven't felt this way in 14 years, and it terrifies me, because I made Richard a promise. But I'm starting to realize that promise was killing me, that honoring him doesn't mean dying alone, that maybe the best way to honor what we had is to believe love is possible again." I felt tears streaming down my face. That's exactly what I was going to say. I took off my wedding ring that night. For the first time in 53 years, it felt wrong. Like removing a piece of myself. I held it in my palm, looked at it, remembered the day Catherine put it on my finger. 22 years old and full of dreams. "I'm not forgetting you," I whispered. "I'm just keeping the other promise. The one about living." Patricia and I took things slowly. Respectfully, we told our children, met each other's families. And then I did something Patricia suggested. "I want to visit Catherine's grave with you. I want to tell her about you, want her to know I'm happy, that I'm not replacing her, that I'm just adding to the love, not subtracting from it." Standing at Catherine's grave with Patricia beside me, I felt peace for the first time in 12 years. "Catherine," I said quietly, "this is Patricia. I need you to know I didn't forget you, could never forget you. Those 41 years were everything. But I made you a promise about living, and I'm finally keeping it. I think you'd like her. I think you'd be happy for me. I hope I'm right." We got engaged on my 71st birthday. A simple proposal in my living room. "Patricia, I never thought I'd do this again. Never thought I'd want to. But you've shown me that the heart is bigger than we think. That it can hold multiple loves without diminishing any of them. Will you marry me?" She said yes through tears. The wedding was small. Both families, close friends, and 2 empty chairs in the front row. One with a photo of Catherine, one with a photo of Richard. Not forgotten, not replaced. Just honored as part of the journey that led to this moment. My son David gave a toast that brought everyone to tears. Dad promised he'd never love again, and we watched him keep that promise for 12 years. Watched him become a shell of himself. Until Patricia showed him that some promises need to be broken so better ones can be kept. Patricia and I had 5 years together. 5 beautiful years of second chances and late-night conversations and learning each other's rhythms. We traveled, spent holidays with blended families, built a life that honored our pasts while embracing our present. And when Patricia died at 73, peacefully in her sleep, I grieved. Of course, I grieved. But this grief was different. It wasn't mixed with regret, wasn't poisoned by what-ifs. I had loved fully, lived completely, kept both promises. At Patricia's funeral, I stood and spoke. 12 years ago, I made a promise that nearly destroyed me. I promised my first wife I'd never love again. Thought that's what loyalty looked like. Then I met Patricia, and she taught me that the heart doesn't betray itself by loving again. It betrays itself by refusing to. These 5 years with her were gifts. Proof that 70 isn't too old. That promises made in grief don't have to become life sentences. That honoring someone's memory means living fully, not dying slowly. So here's what I learned. What I want you to know if you're listening: if you've made promises to yourself about never loving again, never trying again, never opening your heart again, those promises might be protecting you, but they're also imprisoning you. The people we love don't want us to stop living when they die. They want the opposite. They want us to love bigger, live fuller, find joy wherever we can. Because that's what love is, wanting the best for someone, even when you're gone, especially when you're gone. I lived to 82. In those final years after Patricia passed, I would tell anyone who'd listen about my 2 great loves. Catherine, who taught me what love was. Patricia, who taught me that love could happen twice. Both precious, both irreplaceable. Both proof that the heart is far more resilient and capacious than we give it credit for. I promised I would never love again after my wife died. At 70, I met someone who showed me that some promises are made to protect us from pain. But pain is part of life. And avoiding pain means avoiding life. So I broke my promise, kept a different one, and lived fully until my very last breath. Because that's the truth about promises made in grief. They feel sacred in the moment. They feel like the only way to honor what was lost. But sometimes the most sacred thing we can do is release ourselves from those promises. Choose life over loyalty to ghosts. Choose possibility over safety. Choose love even when it's terrifying. Especially when it's terrifying. My story is proof. Living proof, that 70 isn't too old, that 12 years isn't too long, that promises can be unmade when they stop serving us, that guilt and grief can coexist with joy and love, that the heart never runs out of room, it just expands, grows, makes space for more. So if you're watching this with promises chaining you to the past, I'm telling you to break them. If you're using loyalty as a reason to stay small and safe and alone, Patricia is telling you to be brave. If you think love only happens once, we're both telling you you're wrong. So beautifully, powerfully, life-changingly wrong. I promised I would never love again, until I met her at 70. And everything changed. The promise, the grief, the future, everything. Because that's what love does. It breaks us open. Even when we think we're permanently closed. Even when we've sworn we're done. Even when we're 70 and convinced it's too late. Love shows up anyway. Patient, persistent. Waiting for us to be brave enough to break the promises that are breaking us. This is my story. James, 70 years old when I met Patricia, 82 when I died. And every single year in between was proof that it's never too late, that love doesn't end. It multiplies, that the best way to honor the dead is to live fully, and that sometimes the most loving thing we can do is break the promises we made in our darkest moments and choose light instead.
Thank you for listening to my story.
If it touched your heart, inscreva-se. There are more stories of mine to come.